You're listening to Behind the Music Podcast, a podcast that features the best musicians in Southern gospel music, with your host, Josh Griffin.
Welcome, everyone, to episode 15 of Behind the Music Podcast. This is your host, Josh Griffin, with our very special guest tonight, Mr. David Owen. Mr. David, I'd like to welcome you in. Thank you for being here, sir.
Back here on the bass guitar, a charter member of New River. Been with us since we started. He's from Sunset, South Carolina, David Owen.
Thank you, Josh. I appreciate the invitation there. I've been looking forward to this. And, been enjoying some of your other podcasts there. So some of my friends there and people from the past there. So looking forward to it.
Yeah, that's right. For many people that may not be familiar with you, Mr. David, I know you started with a very prominent group back in the early 90s, I believe 1991. But go ahead and tell us a little bit about your how you started out in Southern gospel music and for the instrument you play, and then we'll go from there. Yes, sir.
Okay, sounds good. Yeah, I grew up and my dad was a pastor and he sang, and years before that he was in some quartets, local quartets, and in the Western North Carolina area. That's where I was born and raised out there. So we grew up, music at church. My mom sang and my both sisters sang. I don't know what happened with me there, so I had to learn to do something else there. So,
Yeah.
But anyway, I had a sister who was an incredible piano player. Anyway, was involved in church, all my life, but never really started playing bass guitar till I was probably a senior in high school. I was kind of late getting started. I was always wanted to play ball of some kind, but started. I had some friends that went to church with, and he said, "Hey, man," he said, "I can get you started." They played and sang in a local quartet there close to where we lived, and so got started with that, and then just it's kind of like you. Grew up and was a Kingsman, Kingsman Inspirations from being right there in Western North Carolina.
Right.
I thought for years that was the only group in Southern Gospel. Anyway, I kind of got started, and I would pull up, get those old live albums out, and try to copy what was happening on there,
Right.
and things like
That's
that.
right.
And so ended up over the years, I played with a couple of local groups. One group, I guess spent the most time in the local area there in Easley, South Carolina, was a group called Trinity. And I was there for about 9-10 years, and I had a friend there, Danny Crawford, who is a very well-respected piano player and session musician, and he spent time with the Singing Americans and the Neelands and doing different things like that. But anyway, got to know Danny, and Danny has probably taught me more about music than anybody that I know. But anyway, as things came around, he had been with the Neelands for a while, and he told me when he came off the road with them, he said, "Yeah, Karen and I talked. Karen Peck said we talked, and someday we'd love to have our own group." And he said, "Man, I'd love for you to get the opportunity to play bass."
Yeah.
It never happens, and so I was excited, but I said, "Well, I don't know if that'll ever happen." So 2 or 3 years down the road, he called me. It's like, "Hey, man, it's about to happen," And so, So I ended up, auditioning and.
Down my way, he's sending blessings and answers along to guide my way. So if I can just believe, and if I can only receive, I'll get a miracle. Sit down to me. And when
that sort of thing. And so I was part of the original group when she started. She started with a live band, and spent almost 10 years with her, and with her and Ricky and Susan, and just always bass guitar just kind of always been my thing. That's the one thing I was always drawn to, even before I started playing.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah. So that's kind of where my Southern gospel roots have come from. So.
Right. I started out on playing rhythm guitar and done that for a little bit, and I'll admit it, I had a little problem with the strumming pattern. Some songs, some of them songs like "Walk in the Sea," I call it like a uh, horse beating song or something, like riding a horsey song.
Right. Yeah. Yeah.
And I'd had trouble playing that. I said, and I'd try it and I try it, and then finally I said, let me try bass guitar. I always heard if you can play guitar, bass is easy. And I got started. I said, they must be some smarter people than I am, because this ain't, but trying to learn it. But I finally stuck with it and took lessons from Adam Borden via FaceTime and learned it. And I pick up the acoustic guitar every now and then just so I remember some chords where I won't forget them, but
Right.
that's where I feel comfortable. But did you play guitar or anything else other than bass, you said?
No, never really did. I
Yeah.
mean, my mom, she put me in piano lessons
Yep.
when I was very young,
Yeah.
and I don't think that lasted very long. And so,
Uh,
looking back, I wish
yeah.
maybe that had, had kind of panned out, but
Yeah.
it didn't. So that would have helped. I could learn,
Yeah.
read music, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So I always just played by ear,
That's
and
right.
reading charts, stuff like that.
Yeah.
So, yeah.
And I took piano lessons for a little bit, and the guy I was taking from, he was a minister of music at a church here in Fitzgerald, and he ended up got moved to another church, and that was my piano lesson. So
Right.
I was gonna get pretty serious with it too, but there that
Right.
went. I said,
Yeah.
well, that'd be more out for need for a piano player if you ever want to do Southern gospel, but that got shot out the window. But yeah.
Yeah, I understand too.
Oh goodness. So speaking of that, talking about your bass guitars and all, what was your first bass guitar? Do you remember?
Yeah, the first one I ever owned was it was one of those, just a really cheap guitar. I mean, it was a guy I went to church with. He had one, and I probably paid $60 for it.
Yeah.
And it was set up. The strings were probably that far off the neck.
Oh yeah.
I'm like, that's what I started with. I'm like, oh wow, okay, so this is what
Yeah.
it's like. And then I ended up, and so I went and decided I was going to buy a new one, and really didn't even know what I was looking for. I was still
Yeah.
pretty green, and I ended up buying a 78, a brand new 78 Fender P bass.
Wow. Yeah.
And I really didn't even know what I had realized till later.
Right.
When I bought, but it was a great bass and
Yeah.
set up nice. And I'm like, oh, okay, so this is much easier,
Yeah. That's right. That's
So
right.
yeah. So I used it, played that for years, and then I bought that probably. Like I say, it's a 78, but I
Yeah.
think I bought it. It was new, but bought it probably 1980,
Okay.
something like that.
Yeah.
And then.
You remember what color and if it was rose?
Yeah, matter of fact, I've got it sitting right here. I can show
Yeah.
it to you
There we
there.
go. Yeah, that's even better. Yeah.
Yeah. I haven't had it out in a while,
Ah,
but
yes.
it's the blonde. It's in great shape.
Maple fretboard. Yeah.
Yeah. So it's a great playing bass. I need to get it out and start using it a little more. So, but
Yep.
I wouldn't take anything for this one. It's just like I say, because it's the first one.
Right. That's right.
The only time I played it on the road with Karen, we did toward my latter years. We did like a hymns project kind of
Yeah.
thing, and so
Mhm.
we shot a video to go with that project. And we actually, our band at that time actually played on that record.
Okay.
And so then we shot a video to go with that thing, and so
Yeah.
I played that P bass on there. So I never did use that one too much on the road.
Right.
And
Yeah.
then probably 1983, 84, something like that, I got a Music Man Stingray
Yes.
that I'll show
Yeah.
that one to you.
Yeah. It's right
That-
quick like that P bass, round wound or flat wound, sir?
Well, it's got round wounds on it right now.
Yeah.
So, but I just recently got into some flat wounds. That matter of fact, this is this is the Music Man I've got.
Yes. Oh,
Um,
yes.
Had it for, like I said, years. It's still in good shape. I played it some on the road with
Uh-huh.
Karen. I'd actually had this one, but bought a 5-string Music Man.
Yeah. Yeah.
When I was right before I joined her group, had that, and then we were working with the Mid South Boys. That's what they
Mhm.
were at the time. And
Yes.
Bobby Bowen had. I had the 5-string. It was a blue with white pick guard. I loved that bass, but Peavy had just come out with a new line of basses, that was just really nice. It had
Right.
a kind of a sketchy reputation at one time with some of those older basses,
Yeah.
but
That's
they had,
right.
this was a PVTL5, and man, I saw that thing and it sounded so good. And so Bobby and I talked, and we worked together a couple of times over the months maybe, and so we ended up trading. I
Yeah.
traded that Music Man for that TL5, and
Okay.
I don't know
Yeah.
if that's the best decision I ever made or not. I'd love to have that bass back, but
I thought we all got stories like that, especially
yeah,
music,
yeah, 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 yeah.
yeah. Oh, yeah. Yes, sir.
But yeah, this one, and I actually, when I was on the road for a while, I actually took the G string off of this one
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
and then added the B string on top there,
Okay.
so I could
Yes.
get the low end, So I
Yeah.
had to set up and played it like that for a while, and so I'm actually uh, with what I'm doing right now, playing it now
Yeah.
probably more than anything, and just put some Labella
Mhm.
stainless steel flat wounds on it. Man,
Yes.
I'm loving those things. So
I've
uh,
you speak about it, talking about that B string and that D, or taking that G string off. I did that with a Sterling Stingray I've got in there. I had a custom bone nut made for it and tuned it with some GHS bass boomers. That's 4-string set BEAD.
right,
Yeah, and it's got
right, yeah,
Aguilar pickup I put in it, Stingray pickup I put in. Yeah, it's pretty good
right, yeah.
sounding.
Yeah,
Yes,
yeah,
sir.
yeah. So that worked well, and then after a few years, I set it back up, in its
Yep,
original state. I went back to put the G back on it.
that's right.
So then I had that one, and
Yeah.
then I was playing that. Well, no, I had that PVTL5 that I was playing with Karen. This would probably been, I don't know, early mid 90s, I guess, 92, 93, 94, something like that. Um, we worked a lot with Gold City back then. We were packaged with them quite a bit, and there was a bass that, matter of fact, I think Adam Borden talks about it. You
Yes.
had him on your thing,
Yeah,
and
that's right.
Mark Fain had that modulus, and
Yep.
man, I loved that thing, and of course, a lot of it was his playing,
Right. Oh,
and so
yeah,
I
that's right.
thought, man, if I had that bass, I would sound like Mark Fain. Well, I finally talked him into selling it to me,
Yeah.
but as it turns out, I was still David Owen,
I,
and
I'm
he was
glad
still
you
Mark Fain.
I'm glad you mentioned that because I'm not a professional, but I have that same thinking too, and don't ever happen with me either. But I'm glad I hear a full-time bass player, a professional, say that. I'm glad to hear that.
Yeah, yeah. What I
Uh,
did find out is when I bought that thing from him,
yeah.
I picked it. I met him in Asheville, North Carolina,
Uh-huh.
and picked it up, and we were leaving. I think I picked it up on a Thursday afternoon, and we were
Yep.
leaving Thursday night. So I took it out on the road, and I realized I always knew Mark had a really just a different touch, a different feel the way he played.
Right.
But man, it was set up so close that I really struggled that weekend, because my attack was a little bit different. And so
Yeah.
I was making a lot of extra noise with that. So I had to get it set up for me.
Right.
But
That's
yeah,
right.
this is that Modulus Q5 that he had.
That's
And
it.
of
Yeah.
course, it's got the graphite neck on it.
Uh-huh.
And I loved that because we did a lot of outdoor stuff in the summers, and
Yep.
that graphite neck, it will just stay true. I mean, it's
Yeah.
not going to move around. It holds tune really, really
That's
well.
right.
So,
Yeah.
so this is one, I'll always hang on to this one,
Yep. That's right.
especially because it's a great bass, but because it was Mark's.
Oh,
And,
yeah.
so
Yeah.
I kid him sometimes when I do message with him. Something's like, man, I should have had you sign it. So,
Yeah. Yeah. That's right.
yeah,
That's right.
yeah.
That'd
So,
been all right. Yeah. That's
yeah. So
exactly right.
that's kind of the basis, and then in the background, a couple of years ago, I bought this Ibanez electric upright.
Mhm.
I don't consider myself an upright bass player, so but I'd always wanted one, and just didn't have the space and couldn't move one around. So I thought I might just try that. It's a little more compact and see if I enjoy it or not. So
Right.
I've used it, a few times, but I'm looking back. I wished I'd spent more time with guys like Mark and
Yeah.
Tim Sir and Ben Isaacs, those guys. Where I had some really good upright teachers right there. I could have learned
Yeah.
from.
That's exactly right. Oh
Yeah,
goodness.
so,
Uh,
that's the bass that I played.
yeah.
So
And would you say that modulus is probably your favorite? Would that be correct in saying?
yeah, I think so. I
Yeah.
mean, like I say, I'm playing Music Man right now, but it kind of
Yeah.
fits. I'm playing right now at our church here in Columbia, South Carolina, River on Hills Baptist Church, and
Yeah.
I play with the modern worship praise
Yeah.
team. And for the style that we do, that Music Man just cuts.
Yeah.
They've got some really nice tones coming out of there for that thing, and they
Yeah.
like it. And so,
That's right.
so I've just been playing it,
Yeah.
So, but if I go do anything else, I still pull out that modulus and
Oh yeah.
use that. So.
Oh, speaking of that, you playing at church. Does any of the people like in the band know of your prior history as far as playing professionally with Karen Peck New River?
Well, it's funny. We had been attending that church for quite a
Yeah.
while, and it's a big church, and so it just didn't really. I mean, I knew a few people, but it didn't
Yeah.
really strike me as a big Southern gospel
Yeah.
church because we don't have a lot of Southern gospel radio right here in Columbia.
Right.
But anyway, so I had messaged our worship pastor, just kind of thanking him for what he was doing, told him, I was enjoying the band and knew what kind of work it was to, kind of manage
yeah.
that situation. And I just briefly mentioned what my background was. And
Right.
so the next Sunday, as he was on his way to the platform there, he walked by me. He said, "Hey," he said, "see me afterwards." He said, "We've got something in common." And
Oh.
so I caught up with him after the service, and
Yeah.
he said, "Yeah, you probably know my family, the Wisnets."
Oh.
And so Susan is his aunt.
Gotcha.
And,
Okay.
yeah, so it
Yeah.
was just kind of funny, So
That's right.
yeah,
Yeah.
Josh Dry. So he's a great guy. I mean, he's solid. Such a great guitar player and vocalist, but man, his heart. He's got a heart of gold and loves God, and works hard, and picking music and stuff like that. But yeah,
Yeah.
so there's a few other people. I still cross paths with people there, and
That's
once they
right.
kind of find out who it was, like, oh yeah, I know who that is, And so,
Yeah. That's
but
right.
yeah,
That's
so.
right. Speaking of getting to join Karen Peck New River, you talk about audition. How's that process? How'd that go about? If you don't mind.
Well, so I was telling that Danny Crawford,
Mm-hmm.
Danny was the keyboard player, and he was part owner in the group at that time. When they were putting the group together, so when he called me, he said, "Yeah," I said, "We'll probably go down to Karen and Ricky's house," and said, "I want them to hear you play." And so they really were just getting started. This would have been in summer of 1990. So, and we didn't even play the first date till I think it was after Christmas, 90. And then we really hit the road hard, in January '91. They started on January 1st. But so anyway, I went down and went to their house, and they were just kind of going through some music, kind of trying to pick some songs, that they could work on and something they might use in a program. And Danny and Karen had written a song when he was on the road with the Neelands and different things like that. So I actually auditioned at her house down
Okay.
there, and so it was.
Yeah.
There wasn't even a drummer there or anything. It was just me and Danny was a keyboard, and
Right.
I think Ricky, because when we started, Ricky was playing acoustic guitar,
Yes.
on stage.
That's right.
And so, but yeah, so it was kind of, I was pretty nervous because I had met Karen before, I'd been to see the Neelands, and
Right.
I think Danny had met her, but this was a different situation, getting to, when you knew you were auditioning for something like this, so I was pretty blessed to, that they offered me the job, and so we continued for all summer and through the fall and into the winter, just rehearsing.
Right.
They would come up to South Carolina. There was a church up there that Danny Crawford went to, and so we would
Mm-hmm.
meet there and we
Yeah.
would rehearse, usually 5, 6, 7 hours, when we
Yeah.
were up, and then they were started, looking for drummers and other musicians, and so they came there.
Right. Yeah.
So yeah. So
Uh. Goodness. And long about that time, and you have to correct me, I just did some research and seen this. Brian Sutton, great guitar player. When did he join and how'd that go about?
well, so I wasn't familiar with Brian, but
Yeah.
in the early days, Eldridge Fox played a big
Hmm.
part in helping Karen.
Yeah.
They'd always had a great relationship, and once Eldridge found out that she was talking about starting a group, he really locked in with her, and was a big help. And they actually signed us to their record label there in Asheville. But I remember he told Karen, he said, there's a kid up here, said, if you can hire him, said, you need to, because if you don't, I might,
Ah,
And so
yeah.
he was, when Brian auditioned, he was probably 16, 15, 16. And
Wow.
he actually came to the church,
Yeah.
brought some gear, and he was still in high school. And he had been
Yeah.
playing with his dad and some guys in a bluegrass band there in Asheville.
Yeah.
But yeah, he had already was pretty well known because he was so young and such a great player, And
Right.
he was one of those guys you knew early on was really going to be a big deal, And
Wow.
uh, so yeah,
Goodness.
he auditioned, and I remember he brought an acoustic guitar and an electric guitar, and
Yeah.
probably mandolin, because that's
Hmm.
primarily what he played early on with us, And then he
Yeah.
added fiddle to that. He learned to play the fiddle while he was with us, and so
Uh,
the first couple of times he had that, and we could hear him in the back of the bus. That was special. Yeah. So you ever
yeah.
listen to anybody trying to learn to play one, but quickly, he turned it into really good music, And so,
Right. Yeah.
but they hired Brian, and so it was funny when we first started traveling. They were
Yeah.
pretty careful about how they booked their dates on Fridays. They tried to look at it to see if we could be close enough where we could leave, say, lunchtime on Friday, and they would have to write Brian a note to get him out of school
Oh,
to come out on the
yeah.
road and play.
Okay.
Yeah,
Yeah.
yeah. So that was pretty
Wow.
cool. And then
That's right.
after Brian graduated, and of course he was driving, he was living in Asheville, and I lived down in Sunset, South Carolina at that
Hmm.
time, which was kind of down at the foot of the mountain, and so we would meet the bus in usually Gainesville, Georgia,
Hmm.
where we drove. And so Brian would come to my house, and we would take, different weeks. Some weeks he would drive, sometimes I would drive.
Right.
So he and I would ride about a couple of hours from my place on to Georgia to meet
Right.
the bus. And so I look back on that, seeing what Brian is today, that's some
Yeah.
great memories. He's the one, I guess, that really turned me on to some good bluegrass. I thought I knew bluegrass till he came along. He's always, every time we get in the car or the truck, he's like, "Hey man, I got something for you to listen to. Listen to it."
Yeah.
Yeah,
Oh, goodness. And see, I never known that. I've seen it until I started doing some research for this podcast, this episode. I never did know that. And I've watched some of his videos on YouTube, and just a great flat picker, just play anything he wants to on guitar. And I
yeah,
imagine same way mandolin and like you say fiddle. Goodness.
yeah,
Did not know that he was with Karen Peck New River at the beginning. That's pretty
yeah,
cool.
yeah, yeah. He was there. He was an original member as well, and then
Yeah.
he
It was
was
almost once
there.
a Kingsman too, it sounds like. Yeah.
Yeah,
Wow.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah. So he was with us probably, can't remember the exact timeline,
Yeah.
maybe 2 or 3 years, something
Mhm.
like that. And then the Mid South boys who were,
Mhm.
operating out of Nashville,
Yeah.
they called and hired him, and so he went to
Okay.
play with them, and then was there a short period of time playing guitar with them,
Yeah.
and then got hired with Ricky Skaggs and Kentucky Thunder. and then it just took off from there for him. So
Goodness.
it was cool. He came back. Karen and them started having their annual homecoming sing they do
Yeah.
down at Delaware. So after they started having that, she would have the band come back and we would play on the Saturday nights. And Brian came back a couple of times and
Yeah.
played with us, and then we did a couple of times we went and did the Opry with her, after we had left, and Brian came out and played on the Opry with us.
Yeah.
And I think one of the times he was already there because Ricky Skaggs, they were on that show that night, and so Brian
Right.
was already there. So, but
Wow.
yeah, Brian was a special guy, special player.
That's right. Goodness, that's cool there now. Oh, man. Goodness. At the time when you was with Karen, did the band ever play on any of the studio albums or anything like that, or y'all did what they used to call like take 3 for 10s or anything like that?
We did. I was, I guess, blessed with the opportunity on the very first record they did.
Yeah.
I played on one song.
Uh-huh.
I believe Tim Surratt played on everything else, but
Yeah.
because we were just getting started, they wanted me to
Right.
play on one. And
Yeah.
I'll be honest with you, I couldn't even tell you the name of the song. It was kind of a slower
Yeah.
ballad kind of thing, But so I
And I
got to
think
play on that, and then we did some 3 for 10s that
Yeah.
our band played on.
that's right.
And but back in those days when we were recording there in Asheville with Horizon,
Uh-huh.
Tim Surratt played on a lot of the stuff. I believe Roger Fortner played on some of it.
Yeah.
But Tim did a lot of it. Anthony Berger played piano on some of it. Danny
Right.
Crawford, he played on some of it, So, but a lot of it was done, and then they signed later on with Spring Hill, which was a Gaither
Yeah.
label.
Okay.
And so that was, some of the Nashville players there, playing on
Yeah.
that stuff.
That's right.
We did a couple of instrumental albums during the 10 years while I was there.
Oh,
One of
okay.
them was
Yeah.
early on. Brian was actually part of, and so
Really? Okay.
so she let
Huh.
us. We played. We kind of did that one ourselves. Give
Yeah.
us a little something to sell on the table, for the band.
That's right.
So, yeah.
I'll have to
It
see
was,
if I can find that somewhere. That'd probably be good music to listen to, I'm sure. Yeah.
yeah,
I'll have
it
to
was
see if I can
fun.
find
We
that.
were able to bring in some of our friends. We played on it, but then I think on that first one, Ricky Skaggs came in and played. Like I don't know, took a pass on one of them, and we've had different Jeff Tallberg and
Yeah.
just Rabbit Easter. Rabbit may have played on both of them. I don't remember, and
Right. Huh.
somebody I can't remember if it was Randy Miller or somebody came in and played harmonica on one of them. I think,
Yeah.
So we tried to always include some of our road buddies, when we recorded
Yeah.
and stuff. So
That's right.
yeah.
That's right. Oh, speaking of your time with Karen Peck New River, what was probably some of your favorite songs to play live?
Oh man, there were so many. We over the years we had quite a catalog. I guess one of my favorite songs, and most people probably wouldn't even remember it. And I think it was off the Unlimited project. That was probably one of my favorites, that
Yeah.
Karen's ever done. But there was a song that I called and you answered, and it was. I mean, it
Okay.
was a great song, but it was just the chord pattern and the
I called and you answered. You promised to be right by my side. My one desire is to be your child. But half is not enough for you. All is what I must give you. Right by my side, you promised to be there.
the groove
Yeah.
of the song. And we opened with that song for a long time. That was kind of our opening thing, and
Yeah.
so that one sticks out in my mind, and we did Wow. So I'm kind of drawing a blank on some of them right now, but yeah, she always was so good at picking material. We had,
Yeah.
really great writers sending them stuff, and so we, about all of their projects were strong, from start to finish. There wasn't a lot of
Filler
filler
songs.
stuff that
Yeah.
you would skip
Yeah.
across, so
That's right. And
yeah,
I
so
forgot y'all had done He's Sending Miracles. Y'all did back in 1984, recorded live at the Alabama Theater in Myrtle Beach.
yeah,
Uh, He's Sending Miracles, Visions of Heaven, They Shall Walk with Me in White, Whenever the Wind Blows, God Still Answers Prayer, Daddy's Home, um, Bend in the River.
It's just a little bit in the river of life. I'm gonna hold on tight, and everything will be alright because my God will deliver. It's just a little bit in the river of life. I've got a promise to cling to until I'm safe round the bend. That God will do what I can't do. He's done it.
Yeah, just some of those
yeah.
great songs.
Yeah. Bend in the River. It was a big song I think, from the time we recorded it till the day I left. That was one of those when people heard that intro. They knew what it was. And it was just a fun song. And some of those others, When Jesus Passes By, and that was a Sandy Night song. And she's a special writer. And
That's
so
right.
I had known her. She was kind of from the same area.
Okay.
Her husband was
Yeah.
Roy Knight. The Roy Knight Singers, and so they were.
Right.
We kind of, when I was doing the local thing, we kind of followed them around. We were in some of the same places and worked a lot of
Yeah.
days with them. And
That's right.
her brother was Aubrey Stevens, who was the
Oh,
drummer for the Nealons, and then went on to
really?
where the Cart started. He played
Yeah.
bass for them, and then moved to drums after they
Huh.
added drums. And
Okay.
Rob Novell,
Yeah.
I believe, came in
Yeah.
then, and so.
Yeah.
But yeah, Sandy had written several songs for us, and
That's right.
When Jesus Passes By, that sort of thing. And so I think that one may have been the very first number one that New River had.
Okay. Yeah.
But yeah. So it's just always been some good material there. So.
It always makes a difference when Jesus passes by. The devil trembles, the enemy flees when Jesus comes on the scene. He always shines a ray of light. The darkening clouds must fly. It always makes a difference when Jesus passes by.
That's right. That's right. Any favorite or memorable NQC moments from over the years playing with Karen Peck New River? Anything like that comes to mind?
Well, it was always fun. I mean, it was intimidating, especially,
Oh, sure.
especially in the
Yeah.
early years. Man, I can
Yeah.
remember, being around so many of these people that whether I grew up watching them or the few years before I started, it's like they're all there together. Of course, we'd been, in QC would have been in September, October. Of course, we'd been out, on the road since January. So a lot of them we've met, but still, they're all right there in one room together, and you're walking out there to play. And there's a lot of good players sitting around
Yeah.
waiting to come on or coming off or whatever. So it was, and the crowds. I mean, it was in Nashville when we first started. Still in
Okay.
Nashville.
Yeah.
And so it was always fun. It was. I'll never forget the first time we did it. We were supposed to be there to give you a certain time to be in sound check, and
Right.
so we were all told to be there at such a time. Well, it came our spot, so you're up there and everything is just, like this. I mean, they had to stay on time, because there was so much
Right.
going on. And our piano player at the time, somehow had forgotten or was running late or something. So here they are asking us to sound check, and it's me.
Yeah.
And I believe it would just been Ricky Gooch playing
Mhm.
acoustic guitar and the drummer, and so it just so happened Denny Autry, who was playing with the Magrooners at that time,
Yeah.
they had such a killer band.
Yeah.
But
Yes.
Danny stepped up and just sat down at the piano, and he said, "Hey, tell me something y'all do." And I think we played "There's a River." That's what we
Yeah.
in the early years we opened with that. And so Danny played and got us through that sound check, kept us looking for too bad, and so that was a
Oh,
moment,
right. Oh man.
Yeah.
Goodness.
So, but
Uh.
but yeah, it was just it was just a blessing, to get to be a part of that kind of stuff. I was honored. I used to tell people, man, I'm just a barely average bass player. I was a pretty good bus driver, so that's how I kept the job for 10 years.
Oh man. Goodness. Mm.
So anyway, but yeah, I look back and
Oh.
I was just blessed. That's all I can say.
Yeah.
God was really good
That's
to
right.
allow me to get to do that
Yeah.
with them, and so many for that many years, and get to
Yeah.
meet so many people I'd looked up to, and
That's
because
right.
I loved the Kingsmen growing up, man,
Yeah.
and then you had all those Kingsmen bass players that sang, I mean, like Wayne Maynard, Arthur
Yeah.
Rice, Tim Surratt, all those guys, and get to meet them and different
Right.
ones, and then working with Gold City. We did in the early years. We were booked by Century 2, which
Uh-huh.
was Becky Simmons, and she was booking Kingsman, Gold City, and a lot of other big groups, and
Right.
they had
Right.
started packaging that King's Gold thing. They were.
Yes.
So usually we would open, and then they would switch back and forth, but then you'd have the Kingsmen come on. Gold City would come on, do their thing, take an intermission, and then come back, and do the King's Gold thing, where they're out there together. So it was always fun just to sit at the, backstage or side of the stage and watch the guys play, do their thing, So
That's
Gary
right.
Jones and Anthony Berger was still there at that time. And of course, they had so many, after Anthony left, so many great players. And,
Yeah. Yeah.
Gary Dale Beaver, he was still there.
Yeah.
Just so many. So it was just, it was the time of my life. Sometimes I pinch myself. So like, oh, wow. So,
Now you know this better than I do. Am I thinking correct when y'all recorded live at Alabama Theater in Myrtle Beach? Was that the same night Gold City did theirs and Kingsman did theirs with King's Gold?
yes, that was
Okay.
same day.
Yeah.
I think we did ours. Think we did like a matinee thing, maybe at
Yep.
3:00 or something like that.
Okay.
And they
Yeah.
may have recorded a couple things with both those groups early, but then they did, did the actual videos,
Yeah.
later
Okay.
that night, and then
Yeah.
it's you mentioned Whenever the Wind Blows, that song. The very next day we stayed over and they shot like a live concept video. Whenever the
Yes.
Wind Blows, we did it out on the beach, and
And that's on
so
that video there at live at Alabama Theater. Yeah.
yeah.
Okay.
So they
Yeah.
Without trying, he rides across the sky. I want my life to be that free, to share his love naturally. Whenever the wind blows, that's when my feet start walking. When I feel his spirit moving, I can't stop talking about his love. I want the world to know where he leads, I'll go. Whenever the wind blows.
we shot that thing. So that is the definitely the only time I have ever walked up and down the beach in a pair of jeans and cowboy boots and carrying a bass
Yeah.
guitar. So
Oh yeah. That's right.
every once in a while I will have somebody that stumbles across that jewel, and will send it to me and say, "Hey, is this you?" I'm like, "Yep, that would be me." So, but it was fun.
know,
I mean,
you-
we had a blast doing that.
You wonder what people on the beach were thinking. Like, what are they doing? But
I I'm sure, I'm sure there were
Oh.
some looks. So, but
Oh, goodness
uh,
gracious.
yeah.
Oh, you talked about your bass guitars, and we'll go right here next, a little bit of the gear. What strings has always been your favorite brand of strings and gauge over the years of strings?
Uh, Probably over the years, I've tried some different things, but
Hmm.
I've
Yeah.
probably used more GHS strings, different types of those. Early on, I mean, many, many years ago, maybe even before I started with Karen, I had, as part of our local group, we had a friend who was a promoter, and she had booked us to open for some pretty well known groups in the local area there. And as it turns out, it was Windy Bag on the Sunlighters. That's when Kevin
Yeah.
Williams was there playing, and then the Hemp
Oh.
Hills. I don't know how
Hmm.
much you followed them or seen. They used
James
to have
Gordon
such a
Freeze.
oh man.
Yeah.
I really wasn't familiar with him until
Yeah.
that night, and I'm like, man, I don't know who this cat is right here, but he's about the coolest thing going, And
Yeah. That
he was
red
playing that
jazz
red,
bass. Oh,
yeah, that
yeah.
red freeze bass, and played it up high, like Adam was
Hmm.
talking about. That's
Yeah.
I went home that night and adjusted my strap too, and
Yeah. That's right.
so. But anyway, I got to know
Yeah.
James some, kind of met him that
Hmm.
night and kind of stayed in touch,
Yeah.
and then as we got closer to starting the group, he actually the hemp hills were off the road, but when I met him like that, that was him and David Creech. Eddie
Yeah.
Bell was playing drums, and of course Trent was playing piano. But man, they had such a band. But
Hmm.
James was playing drums for the Nealons when Karen left, when she finished up.
Oh.
So, but
Okay.
James Gordon had a, GHS endorsement, and
Yeah.
so he kind of hooked me up, for a
Yeah.
long time. If I needed something like that, he could get them for me really cheap, And so I
Yeah.
used them. They're great strings, And so
That's right.
I've probably used more of those over the years, than like I say. I just had about a year ago tried these Lobellas. I really
Yeah.
love those, So
That's right.
I probably, unless I've changed the style of music I'm playing, I probably would stick with that again.
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
so but
That's right.
that's I've used DRs, and
Hmm.
I was like everybody else, like man, I looked up so much to like Mark Fain. It's like, Mark, what are you using? And
Yeah.
whatever he was using, I tried that, and again.
Oh, yeah.
It
Yeah.
was still David Owen playing those Mark Fain strings, So, but
Oh,
so,
man.
but
Goodness.
yeah.
Yeah.
So, but man,
Oh.
I was so blessed. There were so many. That's back in the day when there was still a lot of bands out
Yeah.
there. And it had been before that, but
Yeah.
during the time period I was out there, there was so many bands out there.
And probably great camaraderie with each, bands and groups and all, it wasn't nothing, just go up and talk to them and ask them gear related stuff and just life stuff. Yeah.
Right.
That's
Yeah,
good.
yeah,
Yeah.
yeah, yeah,
That's
yeah.
good.
So, but yeah, so that's kind of string wise. That's the kind of what I've used over the years. So.
Yeah. Um, Amps. What amps did you use over the years?
When I first started with Karen, I had a Music Man amp. It was a
Yeah.
piggyback setup.
Uh-huh.
I had Danny Crawford. I keep referring back to him, but he owned a
Yeah.
music store for years there in Eastern
Ah.
South Carolina, and so
Yeah.
Music Man was kind of getting away from building amps and stuff, but he was able. They still had a few left in a warehouse, and so I was able to. I'm thinking that thing maybe had a 15, and
Yeah.
then the head with it. So I used that for a little
Uh-huh.
while, and it was a good size amp, and then
Yeah.
not long after that, I started seeing everybody using these Gallion Krugers. They had the little
Yeah.
10-inch horn, the little metal cabinet and everything.
Uh-huh.
And I
Yeah.
really loved the sound of those. A lot of the guys we worked with, had those. And so when
Right.
Aubrey Stevens, when uh, he was playing bass for Perfect Heart, when they first started, and then they had decided they were going to add drums. And so Aubrey moved over to drums. And I'm pretty sure that's when Rob, I believe he was the first bass player to come in. Can't remember. I may be wrong about that. But anyway, so Aubrey had one of those little Gavin Kruger amps. And he was wanting to sell it. So I bought that from him, and then I bought a little Hartke cabinet that had a couple of tins in it. I bought that from
Okay.
Tim Servant. And
Yeah.
so I used that little combination. It wasn't a real nice looking rig, but it sounded great. And
That's
so
right.
but I used that for a lot of years, and then
Yeah.
I keep going back to Mark, but
Yeah.
Mark was one of the first ones that I worked with that had that SWR Redhead, and so
Yeah.
I played through his a lot, and just so happened our drummer Dale Scragg's like, man, I saw this guy in a trade paper. Of course, this was back before we weren't sitting there with cell phones and iPads and stuff
Yeah.
like that. We were
That's
stopping
right.
by the convenience store and picking up trade papers. Before we got on the bus. There was
Yeah.
a guy in Atlanta that had a redhead and a almost brand new Padula that he just had at
Uh,
home. He didn't play in a band or anything, but he was wanting to sell
yeah.
the redhead, so I bought that redhead from him, and so that's
Goodness.
uh, that's what I finished out. My years with Karen using that redhead. Then I
Yeah.
had a Sans Amp DI
Uh-huh.
that I used to go with it. Was running through that
Yeah.
and then into the redhead, and so
Okay. Yeah.
yeah. So
That's right.
that's kind of amp wise. That's what I was using. So,
Yeah. That's right. Goodness. Oh, that's good stuff. That's good stuff.
yeah.
Well, Mister.
That Sans Amp thing, we
Uh-huh.
had been seeing them and talking, and
Yeah.
played through some of them, and the guys kept saying, "Man, Dave, you need to get one of those." And of course, at that time they weren't very expensive, but man, I
Right.
had two kids at home and my wife, and
Right.
life, so I wasn't going to just run out and throw a bunch of money down, on something. But
Uh-huh.
Joel Key, I don't know if you're familiar
Yeah.
with Joel, but Joel came in and
Yes,
was
sir.
playing. He was another Brian Sutton kind of player. He
Yeah.
was incredible, and so Joel was his playing, his heart was as big as his talent, you know.
Yeah.
And so I got on the bus one night, and there was a box on my bunk, and I think the note on it said, "Here you go," or something like that. I opened it up, and it was a brand new Sans Amp DI, and
Yeah.
Joel had bought it and given it to me, and I've still
Wow.
got that today. Matter of fact, that's what I play through at our church now. We've got
Yeah.
a lot of nice stuff to play through, but we're using that
That's
thing
right.
right now, so get some
I bought
really good
one.
tone.
I think I bought one before. It's been several years before 2020, and used it a couple times playing live,
Right?
and
Yeah.
very good sounds out of it. You got your volume mids and treble on there, and bass boost I think on there as well or
Yeah.
something, and you
Yeah.
can do whatever you want to with it. Yeah, basically,
Yeah.
very good. Yeah, I
Yeah.
used the that Amp SGT DI the other night. We played at church live, and just I took my Portaflex PF 500 and got on top of the 1x15 Ampeg cabinet, the modern day flip top, and I took that and I was going to just use the preamp off that DI pedal, Ampeg SGT DI. Well, before I know it, I turned around and looked at something, and I didn't even have the amp on. I was just running straight from it. I had it hooked up to power, of course, but running straight to the soundboard, and then from there to the subwoofer. I said, man, that thing sounded pretty good. I said, good, I ain't got to take this heavy amp no more. I can just use this on different, venues or whatever. Yeah. And I didn't know I watched a video on how to do it, make sure I done it right, and I was going to use that. But the only thing I didn't have that amp as a monitor, but I could, I was up about close enough by the subwoofer I could hear. So, but it turned out pretty good. Yeah.
Right.
It turned out really, I
Yeah.
surprised myself. I said, I just fell into that.
Yeah. I've seen some
Oh,
pictures of your
goodness.
rig there. You got a nice little setup there. So, yeah, nice bass.
I change stuff and try out different stuff. I'm bad about that right now. Probably when I get older, that probably calm down, I imagine.
Well, maybe
Oh,
not.
goodness. Yeah, that's right. Well, Mr. David, if you don't mind, we'll end it up on a good, funny road story, if you don't mind. Something memorable if you would like to tell, if you don't mind, please, sir.
Oh, wow. So I'm trying to think. I mean, there's been so many, and I guess I'm really telling it on somebody else, but I was so fortunate to play with so many good guys that came through
Yeah.
the New River camp. You know, I mean, Brian and Danny, and our first drummer was James Monroe, and then Rodney Underwood, who is actually married to Tammy, who was one of the daughters of the Perry sisters that were so
Ah,
popular many years ago. Rodney was our
yeah.
drummer. He came. He had been with the Perrys, and then he was with us for a while. And then Dale Scragg became our drummer. Dale was there. He and I played together probably 7 or 8 years. You know, there with Karen. But and then Craig Nobles came after Danny left. Craig was just an incredible player and funniest human being, you know, on the planet. We had such a good time with him. But
Yeah.
anyway, so we were always picking at each other. But we got on the bus one night and we found out that we were traveling somewhere, but on a Saturday morning, maybe it was that Karen had been asked to come do a some kind of seminar of some type. I don't
Yeah.
remember if it would be like a vocal thing or exactly what it was, but so we knew we were going to this venue early to be, you know, it was a smaller group. But anyway, so I don't know what possessed us to do it, but Dale was the last one to get on the bus that night. And so
Yeah.
I went up there and everybody else had gone to bed. Dale was driving the first shift. We took shifts driving. And Dale was going to drive the first shift that night. And so I told him, I said, man, I said, this is crazy. I said, you know, Karen's doing that thing today. I said, they called her this week. They want us to do a band seminar at this place tomorrow. And he's like, what? I said, yes. I mean, I really, I can't believe I
Yeah.
just did this to him. But anyway, if I had done it to him, he would have done it to me. You know, that's just the way it works.
Right.
You know,
Yeah. That's
so
right.
we talked about it. We spent an hour. Dale's like, well, hey, grab a pen and paper. Let's start trying to think about what are we going to talk about, you know. And so we had some,
Oh,
we'd already recorded one of the instrumental projects. So he said, hey, let's get a box
yeah.
of those. We'll take those in and maybe give a few away. And we had some promo pictures of the band. And we were going to do
Yeah.
that. So we spent, I mean, an hour or two that night kind of talking through what we were going to do. Well, I had told Karen what we were doing as well.
Yeah.
So the next day we all got up, you know, and got dressed and ready. And we get to the venue. Of course, Karen and them getting ready to get off, and they were going to their thing. And Dale happened to be the first one of the band guys to get off the bus, and he run into this person who I guess was kind of watching the door, and he said, "Yeah, I'm so and so." This Karen Peck New River said, "We're doing a band seminar here today," and they said, "You doing what?" And of course, there was no band seminar. You know?
Right. Yeah.
And so here Dale was with an
Oh,
armful of stuff, you know, and we spent all that time
y'all done worked him up to it. Yeah.
So anyway, but Dale's such a good sport, you know. We still to
Uh,
this day we've got a little text thread, you know, that's Karen and
yeah.
Susan and Ricky and Craig and Dale. Me, we'll get on there and I mean it'll be
That's right.
serious. Hello's, how you doing? Or man, I miss you. And
Right.
then within 4 minutes, somebody's taking a shot at each other, you know. And it's like old times, you know. So, but you know, just
Oh,
stuff like that, you know. So,
y'all, you,
I
you
like I
had
say,
him
I was so
nervous.
blessed.
Yeah. You had him nervous the night before and had him trying to figure up something. And he was gun
Yeah,
ho about it that morning and got shot down.
yeah, because there was none of us really that
Oh,
we were most comfortable on the back of the stage where we played at. That I mean,
yeah.
that's where we were home. You know, we were
That's
not,
right.
you know, frontline people nor wanted to be. You know,
Right.
so
Yeah.
we were just happy back there. So for us to go do something like that wasn't our personality to start with. You know? So,
Oh, man.
yeah.
Goodness
So and then
mercy.
just another quick story. This is another funny
Yeah. Go ahead.
but Craig
Yeah.
Noble. So I had to take this would have been on the 4th of July one year, and for some reason I had to be off that weekend, and so Todd Nealon
Yeah.
came out and played
Yeah.
bass with him. And so Todd, I mean, he's quite the character, you know. He's always
Yeah.
joking and going on. And so they were doing a big church event. They had like an all-day 4th of July thing going. And so there was 2 or 3 times throughout the day that Karen and them had to sing and play, you know,
Yeah.
the whole deal. And so they had already done one. They come back to the bus and change clothes, and was thinking it would be another 4 or 5 hours before they'd be going back on again. So they're all sitting up in the front lounge, and Craig is sitting up there by himself. I think Karen and them maybe were in the back. I don't remember where they were at. Todd come flying across the parking lot, jumped up in the front of the bus and said, "We're on in 5 minutes. We're on in 5 minutes." And so Craig flying to the back, and grabbed his clothes, and he bailed out across the parking lot, still putting his. That's back in the day when we were still wearing suits and stuff like that and ties.
Right.
So he went flying across the parking lot trying to get it finished tying his tie and put his coat on. Only to happen to look over his shoulder and see Todd and a couple other guys just standing there dying laughing. There was no going to be on in 5 minutes, but so Craig, it took him a little bit to get over that one, but there was a lot of laughs out of that. So I wasn't even really there for that one, but that was Todd Naylor putting his stamp on the New River band there. So.
Oh, mercy. Goodness gracious. Well, everyone, I hope you enjoyed this great interview here with Mr. David Owen, the charter bass player for Karen Peck New River. David, it's been my honor, and I appreciate you, sir, for doing this for me, being willing to do this, and you've done a great job, and I appreciate you, sir.
Well, thank you, Josh, and I appreciate what you're doing. It's fun for people like me to get to talk about these things, and also to go back and see the others you've done. I know you just did one with Scoot. Man, he's such a great guy, great player. Tim and Greg, all these guys, and Nick Bruno, what a legend there, and so I appreciate what you're doing, and I want to encourage you to keep playing, man. I remember those days, being a young guy, just want to play. So, I want to keep encouraging to do that, and for anybody out there that, if you've got that dream, man, just keep God first. That's the biggest thing, man. He's just been so good to me over the years. And so I'm so blessed.
That's right.
For different opportunities and even opportunities today. And this is one of them. So thank you, Josh.
Yes, sir. That's right. And I'll mention too before we close out, if nothing happens, I'm trying to work on it and hopefully get bunch of the guys back that I have interviewed so far, and hopefully if everything goes right, we can get this plan. We'll do like a big Facebook Live / YouTube Live, do a live stream that night and just get all these guys together and just let them talk back and forth amongst another, sharing memories and road stories and stuff like that. But hopefully we'll get that going. And but yeah, I'll be sure to like us and follow us on Facebook, and we'll announce it on there. But hopefully nothing happens, Mr. David. I'll be contacting you about that, and we'll see if we can get it started. Yes, sir.
That sounds like a plan. I'd love that. So,
yes, sir. Thank you. Thank you, everybody, for listening. This has been episode 15 with Mr. David Owen. Thank you, and God bless. Keep listening, keep sharing, and we'll come up with some more great guests soon. Thank you so much. Well, everyone, I thought we was about done, but David was telling me some stories right quick about filling in with a couple of other groups as well. Go ahead, Mr. David, and tell about those if you don't mind right quick.
Yeah, I will. We were at convention one year, end of the week, and Rory Rigdon was playing bass with Kingsman. Of course, big Kingsman fan, you grew up, and so I just love being around and everything going on. But anyway, Rory had a high school reunion back in Asheville, North Carolina on that Saturday night. And he was really hoping to attend, but they still had road dates. And so Greg Fox had told him, said, if you can find somebody to go play with us, then you can go home. Yeah. So Rory came over and asked me about it. And we were finished with our, part of convention for the week. We were just hanging out at the table, not playing. Karen said, yeah. So I went to, I think it was a theme park somewhere down in Florida, and so Parker Jonathan, he gave me 2 or 3 videos, and he said, hey, just if you want to listen to some of this is kind of the stuff we'll be doing. And so I went and sat on the bus like Friday afternoon before convention, just listening and playing through it, trying to make sure. I knew most of that stuff,
Yeah.
And of course, the New River guys, they were loving it because they're like, Oh man, Hamill is just going to kill you out there on the road. He's going because
Oh,
everybody,
yeah.
everybody
That's
loved
right.
Hamill, but he
Yeah.
loved picking at you. And as
Yeah.
it turns out, he had decided to go on home, so he didn't travel with the group to Florida. So I didn't get to do it with Hamill, but it
Yeah.
was the rest of them, Ray and Chris Collins and
Uh-huh.
Parker and Brian Hudson and Randy Miller and Andrew
Yeah.
Ishii, those guys. So that was a lot of fun to get to do that. And then
That's right.
I guess it's probably been close to 2 years ago. I went and played a couple of dates with the Kingdom Ayers. So love those guys, love that sound, man. They're such a good group. And
Yeah.
Chris French was out with a medical issue there, and so I went and played a couple of dates with them, filled in with them. So that was kind of another little bucket list thing, to get to play with Andy and Dennis, at that time. And of course, that
That's right.
Warren and Jeff and all those guys. So it was a lot of fun. So again, man, I've just been so blessed to get to do some of this stuff.
Oh, yeah. And I imagine just falling in on two different groups like there and playing. I mean, you got to be, you know what I'm saying, sure enough, real good bass player and can pick up on the fly. You know what I'm saying? Just get it and go with it. That's neat. Yeah.
Well, I was fortunate with the Kingdom Airs because they happen to have charts for all of their
Ah,
stuff, and
yes.
so a lot of it, I knew.
Right.
I mean, I was familiar with, but so they
right.
pulled out. I got there for sound check, and they had about 15 charts laying there. Said you'll find it all right here somewhere. So some of the things that moved around a little bit.
Yeah.
I did kind of have to rely on that a little bit, but it was fun just to get to play with those guys. And,
Wow.
but I mean, I loved being with Karen doing the mixed group thing.
Yeah.
But, I've always loved the quartets,
Yeah, sure.
So
Mm.
it was fun times, So
That's right. Oh, thank you, Mr. David. That's pretty neat right there. There's two experiences like that. Something you won't never forget, and
exactly.
your time all together instead of the gospel music. That is neat. Yes, sir.
Yeah.
Yes, sir.
Thank you, Josh.
Hey, I appreciate you, Mr. David. Thank you, sir.
Yes, sir.
You have been listening to Behind the Music Podcast with your host, Josh Griffin. Tune in next time, and until then, please rate and share this podcast.